Welcome to another Howls and Growls breakdown. And since it's the All-Star break and there's no Minnesota basketball, I want to talk a little bit more about their defense as a whole. We've spent a whole lot of this season zooming in on the Wolves' defense from a game-by-game perspective, but when you zoom all the way out, it's shaping into one of the most special defensive seasons the entire league has seen for some time. You see here, this is a team who is not only the best defensive team in the league right now, but the best defensive team relative to league average since that famous Boston team in the late 2000s. They're elite at defending the rim and the mid-range, and that's what drives down opponent effective field goal percentage. But what goes into those numbers is versatility in scheme and really excellent execution. So in the spirit of looking at this defense from a zoomed out perspective, we're going to break down their base concept, the way their best defenders are involved within their defense, the way they destroy offenses with their size and their helping ability, and all the good stuff that makes this team a contender even without one of the league's elite offensive styles. So we're going to start with their base defensive scheme, which is drop coverage. The basics of this concept is that the big man defender will drop off the level of the screen. That allows him to move backward to protect the rim, but also hover around and cut off the pass to the roll man. The aim here is to force defenders to make shots in the mid-range and rely not only on that big man defending both the rim and the roll man, but the point of attack defender on the ball to get through the ball screen and stay in the action. You see Gobert is dropping back here to make sure the roll man can't get an easy look, but that only works because McDaniels can get through this screen and stick with the ball. That allows Gobert to stay between the ball and his man, while McDaniels handles the player with the ball and forces a missed shot. So the key component of this drop coverage defense is always going to be ball pressure and screen navigation. If the point of attack defender can slip through screens and stay in touch with the scorer, the defense gets a huge boost. Drop coverage is essentially 2-on-2 basketball, so if that defender gets picked off, the big defender has to deal with two players coming downhill at him. Avoiding that is a pillar of Minnesota's defense. And it's about personnel. We know that Jaden McDaniels does it. If he gets hung up on a screen, Banchero is coming down at Towns here with a head of steam. Instead, he gets over it easily so he can check Banchero one-on-one and Towns can fan back out to the shooter who's coming out of that pick and pop action. By getting over that screen, they've prevented an open three and forced a tough mid-range shot. So McDaniels is Minnesota's first point of call as the ball stopper in their foundational drop coverage defense. He's the guy that gets the toughest opponents from the jump each night and the one that really drives the standards in terms of getting through ball screens and winning those 2-on-2 defensive battles. But Minnesota have Nickeil Alexander-Walker as well, and he's jumped up into the echelon of elite screen navigators and overall point of attack defenders this season. Whereas McDaniels is all about length and the ability to recover ground with his size, Alexander Walker is a supreme chaser who still maintains that elite screen nav ability. You see here he ducks under this first screen. That means he is able to cut off a potential drive, but he loves to extend this leg out in front of a screen when he's coming over picks, and by getting through those screens, he allows his big man to play between the ball and the roll man, so Gobert doesn't have to overcommit and leave his own man sliding in behind him for an easy lob pass. That's why this drop coverage is so destructive to opposing offenses. If the on-ball defender does his job, the big man don't have so much burden on them to stop the league's best scorers. Even on a double ball screen here, Alexander Walker gets over the first one and then stays with Doncic through the play. His bigs trust that he can do that, so Towns can slide down here to guard Lively and stop any easy points at the rim, while Reed can sit in this gap to get out to the shooter without having to overcommit to crowd out Luka. When you're watching the Wolves and wondering how they manage to suffocate teams with their defense, it's that ball pressure I keep mentioning that is the key reason, and the amount of bodies that they have who thrive in that area as well. You see here, it's not just McDaniels and Alexander Walker that thrive as on-ball stoppers, but Anthony Edwards grades out as above average with his strength and his lateral quickness, and Kyle Anderson brings his length and his brain power to the equation as well. But above all, Minnesota have the ultimate fallback option in Rudy Gobert. Naturally, even those elite perimeter defenders are going to get screened off or beaten downhill once in a while, and that's when Gobert is sitting in that drop coverage to erase mistakes that his defense makes. And obviously, it's Gobert's length and smarts that make him such an exceptional defender, but in general, the way Minnesota uses their size to plug up gaps in the court and then scramble around to help their teammates is their biggest strength outside of their pick and roll coverage. If a team is going to lean into being as big as Minnesota are, they need to use that size to shrink the court, and that's exactly what they do. So I want to run you through some examples here of what I'm talking about, because this is my favorite part of Minnesota's defense, and this is what makes them a truly special defense. There's a lot of teams who can deploy a venomous pick and roll defense, but there are very few teams in NBA history who can turn a spaced out half court into an all-engulfing throng of defenders. So this is a good example here. They trap the ball screen with two coming up to the ball, and then it's all diligence behind that. Alexander Walker holds up Porzingis to stop an easy pass on the roll at first, but only for a second so he can still get out to Holiday and stop that threat as well. So Edwards and Gobert now have to come from the backline to shut down that rim roll, and it's those little things like Alexander Walker giving his teammates an extra second to react that matter a ton for defense. Again, we see it on this possession. Conley stunts in at the driver. McDaniels is already in helping as the low man, and he's going to come across, and then when Prince gets into the paint, he's going to step up to provide that rim protection. That means Russell is open behind the play, so Gobert steps into that gap and covers that danger, and then Edwards and Gobert will pivot around to get a hand up on Davis and the eventual shot. On this next defensive possession, we're going to see Anthony Edwards all the way over here in gap help out of the pick and roll. He still has that speed to get back to the corner though. That's that court shrinking I was talking about earlier. And then it's going to be Gobert who comes across and provides the help at the rim to force that miss. This isn't normal in today's NBA, and you don't see teams doing this as often as Minnesota do. So McDaniels is chasing around someone a foot smaller than him. Gobert steps up into here to force the pass. The Wolves commit so many bodies toward the paint to prevent shots at the rim, but they still fan out quickly when that pass comes. So there's no 3-point look. It's drive again and gap help coming in again. The ball gets past that gap help, so McDaniels rotates over now to cover the shooter. That prevents another 3-point shot from going up, and again it forces a drive into the paint, and that's when Gobert can step across off his man to protect the rim. This isn't a defense, this is a living, breathing organism. It's one synergistic group of people working on a string, and that allows them to take more risks. For example, Edwards can step up into here in heavy gap help to stop SGA here, knowing that when Chet cuts backdoor, Gobert will shuffle over to meet him at the summit, and Gobert himself knows that he can leave the weak side open, and Towns is going to dig down and box out to get that rebound. So really that's the basis of Minnesota's defensive dominance. It's not the entire thing. They can play up in pick and roll coverage. They have a really good zone defense that they mix in as well, and they're able to toggle between their coverages really well. But when you build a defensive foundation off an insane drop coverage, and a scramble mentality where every player has their teammates back, then already you're doing more than most defenses in the league are doing. And right now the Wolves are a contender built almost solely off the back of that defense. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it as we ramp up into playoff time. Thanks again for watching Howls and Growls. Please subscribe for more.